The spring sun shone brightly on the small white church in the quiet town of Meadowbrook. It was Saturday, the perfect day for a wedding. People dressed in their best clothes walked into the church, talking and smiling. Today was Sarah Miller's wedding day. She was marrying Thomas Clark after 5 years of being together. Among the guests was a small boy named Jamie. He was 7 years old, and Sarah's nephew. Jamie wore a new suit that made him feel stiff and uncomfortable. His mother had made him comb his hair neatly to the side, but one stubborn curl kept falling over his forehead. Jamie didn't like wearing fancy clothes, but he loved his Aunt Sarah very much, so he didn't complain. "Stand up straight, Jamie," his mother whispered as they found seats in the church. "And remember what we talked about. You must be quiet during the ceremony." Jamie nodded, but his mind was already somewhere else. He looked around at the church filled with flowers and ribbons. Everything looked different from the regular Sundays when his family came here to pray. The church smelled like roses and candles. Jamie had a special bond with his Aunt Sarah. She was his mother's younger sister, and she always had time for Jamie. When his parents were busy, Sarah would take him to the park or for ice cream. She knew all his favorite stories and never got tired of reading them to him. She even played with his toy dinosaurs and made funny roaring sounds that made Jamie laugh until his stomach hurt. When Jamie found out that Aunt Sarah was getting married, he had mixed feelings. He was happy because Sarah looked so excited when she showed him her engagement ring. But he was also worried. Would she still have time for him after she married Thomas? "Thomas is very nice," his mother had told him. "You'll still see Aunt Sarah all the time." Jamie had met Thomas many times. He was tall with kind eyes and a funny laugh. He always gave Jamie high fives and once took him and Sarah to a baseball game. Thomas was okay, Jamie thought, but no one was as special as his Aunt Sarah. The church was now almost full. Jamie could see his grandparents sitting in the front row. His grandfather winked at him when they made eye contact. On the other side sat people Jamie didn't know. Thomas's family, he guessed. Suddenly, the music changed. Everyone stood up and turned to look at the back of the church. Jamie stood on his tiptoes to see better. First came 3 women in light blue dresses, Sarah's friends. They walked slowly, holding small bunches of white flowers. Then came Lisa, Sarah's best friend, in a darker blue dress. And then there she was. Aunt Sarah looked different today. She wore a long white dress that seemed to float around her. Her hair was pinned up with tiny white flowers, and a thin veil covered her face. But Jamie could still see her smile. The biggest smile he had ever seen on her face. Sarah held onto her father's arm as they walked slowly down the aisle. Jamie's grandfather wiped a tear from his eye. Jamie's mother squeezed his shoulder gently. At the front of the church stood Thomas, looking nervous but happy. When he saw Sarah, his face changed. He looked like someone who had just received the best gift in the world. Jamie watched as Sarah reached Thomas. They held hands and looked at each other. The priest started talking about love and promises. Jamie didn't understand all the words, but he could feel something important was happening. What nobody knew was that Jamie had a secret. He knew something about Aunt Sarah that no one else at the wedding knew. Something that would surprise everyone, even Thomas. Jamie wasn't planning to tell this secret, but sometimes secrets find their way out when you least expect them to. After the church ceremony ended, everyone moved to the big tent set up in the garden behind the church. The tent was decorated with white and blue ribbons that matched the bridesmaids' dresses. Round tables with white tablecloths were arranged around a wooden dance floor. Each table had a small vase of fresh flowers in the center. Jamie walked with his parents to their table. His father held his hand, guiding him through the crowd of grown-ups who were talking loudly and laughing. Jamie saw his Aunt Sarah and Thomas standing at the entrance of the tent. They smiled and thanked people as they came in. Sarah looked even prettier when she smiled. "Can I go say hi to Aunt Sarah?" Jamie asked his mother. "Not yet, honey," she answered. "Sarah and Thomas need to greet all the guests first. You'll have time to talk to her later. Jamie sat at the table with his parents and his cousin Emma, who was 12 years old. Emma was playing with her phone under the table, even though her mother had told her not to bring it. Jamie felt bored. He swung his legs back and forth under his chair and played with the fork on the table. "Stop that," his father said softly. "Remember what we talked about. Best behavior today." Jamie nodded and tried to sit still. He watched as servers in black and white clothes brought plates of food to each table. The grown-ups were served small glasses of something bubbly. Jamie and Emma got apple juice in fancy glasses that made them feel important. A man with a camera walked around taking pictures. He asked Jamie's family to smile, and the flash from his camera was so bright that Jamie had to blink hard to see again. The man said something about Jamie looking very handsome in his suit, but Jamie didn't feel handsome. He felt itchy and stiff. As Jamie ate his chicken and potatoes, he kept thinking about his secret. Last year, when he was in the hospital for a long time with a kidney problem, Aunt Sarah had visited him every day. She brought him new books and toys. She sat with him for hours, reading stories and playing games. But there was one night that Jamie remembered most clearly. It was late, and Jamie had been crying because he was scared about his operation the next day. His parents had gone home to rest for a few hours, promising to return before morning. Sarah had stayed with him. She held his hand and told him everything would be okay. "You know what, Jamie?" she had whispered in the dark hospital room. "If you ever need a new kidney, I will give you one of mine. The doctors tested me, and we're a perfect match. But don't tell your mom and dad. They have enough to worry about." Jamie had been amazed. "Wouldn't that hurt you?" he had asked. Sarah had smiled. "I would be fine with just one kidney, and I would do anything to make you better." Jamie never forgot those words. When he got better without needing a new kidney, he kept Sarah's promise as their special secret. He hadn't told anyone. Not his parents, not his friends, not even Emma. Now, as Jamie looked across the tent at his aunt in her beautiful white dress, he wondered if Thomas knew how brave and kind Sarah was. Did he know she was willing to give away a part of herself to save Jamie? Did anyone know? The sound of tapping on glass interrupted Jamie's thoughts. Thomas's best friend, Mark, stood up holding a small microphone. He announced it was time for speeches. Everyone clapped and turned to listen. Jamie watched as Mark told funny stories about Thomas from when they were in college together. People laughed and clapped. Then Sarah's sister, Jamie's mother, stood up to speak about Sarah. She talked about how Sarah had always been kind and thoughtful, even as a little girl. "Sarah has the biggest heart of anyone I know," Jamie's mother said, wiping a tear from her eye. Jamie nodded to himself. He knew exactly how big Sarah's heart was. And soon, without planning to, he would let everyone else know too. The speeches went on for some time. After Jamie's mother finished speaking about Sarah, Thomas's father stood up to talk. He was a tall man with gray hair and glasses. He told everyone how happy he was to welcome Sarah into their family. Then Thomas stood up and talked about how he met Sarah 4 years ago at a coffee shop. He said it was the best day of his life until today, their wedding day. Everyone clapped and some people wiped tears from their eyes. Jamie noticed that even his father, who rarely cried, looked emotional. The man with the microphone, who was in charge of the party, asked if anyone else wanted to say something about the bride and groom. Without thinking too much, Jamie raised his hand high in the air. His mother looked at him with surprise. "Jamie, what are you doing?" she whispered. But it was too late. The man with the microphone had seen Jamie's hand and was smiling at him. "Well, look at this. We have a young gentleman who would like to speak," the man said. "Come on up here, young man." Jamie's father started to protest, but Jamie was already sliding off his chair. He felt a strange mix of nervousness and excitement as he walked to the front where the man stood. The room became very quiet. All the grown-ups were looking at him. Jamie saw his Aunt Sarah watching him with a curious smile. The man lowered the microphone for Jamie to reach it. It made a loud screeching noise that made everyone cover their ears. Jamie jumped a little, but then took a deep breath. "Hi," he said into the microphone. His voice sounded strange and loud. "I'm Jamie. Aunt Sarah is my mom's sister." The guests made soft awe sounds. Someone said, "How cute." Jamie didn't like being called cute, but he continued anyway. "Aunt Sarah is the nicest person I know," he said, speaking slowly to make sure he didn't make mistakes. "Last year, I was really sick. I had to stay in the hospital for a long time." Jamie saw Sarah's smile fade a little. She sat up straighter in her chair. Thomas put his arm around her shoulders. "Every day, Aunt Sarah came to see me," Jamie continued. "She read me stories and brought me toys. She made me laugh when I felt sad." People were smiling now. They thought this was just a sweet story about a kind aunt. But Jamie wasn't finished. "One night, I was really scared about my operation," Jamie said. "My mom and dad went home to sleep, but Aunt Sarah stayed with me. And she told me something that night. She told me a secret." Sarah's eyes grew wide. She seemed to suddenly realize what Jamie might say next. She half rose from her chair, but then sat back down slowly. "Aunt Sarah told me that if I needed a new kidney, she would give me one of hers," Jamie announced proudly. "She said the doctors tested her, and she was a perfect match for me. She said she wasn't scared at all to give me her kidney." A gasp went through the room. People looked at each other in shock. Jamie's parents stared at Sarah with their mouths open. They had never known about this. No one had known. "I got better without needing a new kidney," Jamie explained. "But Aunt Sarah was ready to give me a part of herself to make me better. That's how nice she is." The room was completely silent now. Sarah had tears running down her face. Thomas was looking at his new wife with an expression of surprise and deep love. Sarah's parents were holding hands tightly, both crying quietly. Jamie wasn't sure if he had done something wrong. He looked around nervously. "I just wanted everyone to know how special Aunt Sarah is," he said in a smaller voice. "She's the best aunt in the world. And I think she will be the best wife, too." For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then Thomas stood up. He walked over to Jamie and knelt down to be at eye level with him. "Thank you for telling us that, Jamie," Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. "I already knew Sarah was amazing, but now I know she's even more special than I thought." Then Thomas hugged Jamie, and the whole room erupted in applause. After the applause died down, Sarah came to the front where Thomas and Jamie were standing. She knelt down next to Thomas so that she was face to face with Jamie. Her makeup was smudged from tears, but she was smiling. "Jamie, I can't believe you remembered that," she said softly. "That was our secret." Jamie looked worried. "Was I not supposed to tell? Are you mad at me?" Sarah shook her head quickly. No, I'm not mad at all. I'm just surprised. That was a long time ago, and you were so little." Thomas looked at Sarah with new eyes. "You never told me about this," he said. Sarah's cheeks turned pink. "I didn't tell anyone," she replied. "It wasn't something I wanted to brag about. I just wanted to be there for Jamie." By now, Jamie's parents had come to the front too. His mother had tears in her eyes as she looked at her sister. "Sarah, I had no idea," she said, her voice shaking. "You would have really done that for Jamie." Sarah nodded. "Of course I would have. He's my nephew. I love him like he's my own." Jamie's father couldn't speak. He just pulled Sarah into a tight hug. When he finally let go, he wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. The man with the microphone seemed unsure what to do next. This was not the usual kind of wedding speech, but everyone in the room was deeply moved by what had happened. "Well," the man said finally, "I think we've just witnessed something very special here today. Let's give another round of applause for Jamie, Sarah, and Thomas." The guests clapped again, even louder than before. Some people were standing up. Jamie felt confused by all the attention. He had just wanted to tell everyone how special his aunt was. He didn't understand why everyone was making such a big deal about it. Sarah's father came forward next. He was an older man with the same kind eyes as Sarah. He took the microphone. "I've known my daughter all her life," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I thought I knew everything about her. But today, I learned something new from my grandson Jamie. I learned that my daughter is even more generous and loving than I realized." He turned to Thomas. "Young man, you've married a truly remarkable woman." Thomas nodded, still looking at Sarah with wonder. "I know," he said, though the microphone didn't catch his words. Jamie was starting to feel uncomfortable with everyone staring and talking about what he had said. He tugged on his mother's dress. "Can I go back to my seat now?" he whispered. His mother nodded and led him back to their table. As they walked, people reached out to touch Jamie's shoulder or ruffle his hair. An old lady he didn't know squeezed his hand and told him he was a very special boy. Back at the table, Emma looked at Jamie with new interest. "That was actually pretty cool," she admitted. "I didn't know Aunt Sarah did that." "Nobody knew," Jamie said, feeling a little proud now. "It was our secret." The party continued, but something had changed. The mood in the room was different. People were talking in small groups, and many were looking at Sarah with new respect. The photographer was taking more pictures than before, especially of Sarah with Jamie. After a while, the band started playing music, and Thomas led Sarah to the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife. They moved slowly, talking quietly to each other as they danced. Jamie watched them from his seat. He saw Thomas say something that made Sarah laugh, then lean down to kiss her forehead. When their dance ended, Thomas did something unexpected. Instead of dancing with his mother-in-law next, as was the plan, he walked over to Jamie's table. "May I have this dance with the young man who knows my wife better than anyone?" he asked, holding out his hand to Jamie. Jamie looked up at Thomas with wide eyes. "Dance? In front of everyone?" He felt his face get hot. "I don't know how to dance," Jamie whispered. Thomas smiled kindly. "Don't worry. You can stand on my shoes, and I'll do all the work." Jamie's mother gave him a gentle push. "Go ahead, Jamie. It's okay." Slowly, Jamie got up from his chair and took Thomas's hand. Thomas led him to the middle of the dance floor. The guests made a circle around them, smiling and taking pictures with their phones. Jamie felt very small with all these grown-ups watching him. "Here, like this," Thomas said. He showed Jamie how to stand on his shiny black shoes. Then he held both of Jamie's hands and started to move slowly in time with the music. At first, Jamie felt silly. Boys didn't dance with men at weddings. But then he saw Sarah watching them with the biggest smile on her face. She looked so happy that Jamie started to feel happy too. He relaxed a little and let Thomas guide him around the floor. "Thank you for what you said about Sarah," Thomas told him as they danced. "I knew she was kind and loving, but I never knew that story." "She visits me all the time," Jamie said, "even when she's busy, and she never looks at her phone when we're playing." Thomas nodded. "That sounds like Sarah. She gives her whole heart to the people she loves. Will you take good care of her?" Jamie asked suddenly. The question came out before he could stop it. Thomas looked surprised, then serious. "I promise I will, Jamie. Every single day." "Good," Jamie said, "because she's my favorite person." "Mine too," Thomas agreed. The song ended, and everyone clapped. Thomas bowed to Jamie, making him feel important. Then Sarah joined them on the dance floor and gave Jamie a big hug. "My two favorite guys," she said, her eyes still shiny with tears. The next song started, and more people came to the dance floor. Sarah's father asked her to dance, and Jamie's father came to take Jamie back to their table. "That was very brave, son," his father said as they walked back. Jamie wasn't sure what had been brave about it. He had just told the truth, but he was glad everyone seemed happy now, even if he didn't understand why his words had been so important. After that, the party became more fun. The band played fast songs that everyone danced to. Jamie and Emma joined a group of children on the dance floor, jumping and moving to the beat. The grown-ups watched and laughed, clapping along. When it was time to cut the cake, Sarah called Jamie to stand with her and Thomas. The photographer took many pictures as they held the knife together and cut the first piece. Sarah made sure Jamie got the first slice, with an extra cherry on top. As the evening went on, more people came to talk to Jamie. Sarah's friends wanted to know more about his time in the hospital. Thomas's mother hugged him and told him he had given them a beautiful gift with his words. Jamie didn't fully understand, but he smiled and tried to answer their questions politely. Later, when the party was starting to slow down and some guests had already left, Sarah found Jamie sitting alone at his table. He was tired now, his eyes heavy with sleep. "There's my hero," Sarah said, sitting next to him. "I'm not a hero," Jamie mumbled sleepily. "You are to me," Sarah told him. "You know what Thomas said to me after your speech." Jamie shook his head. "He said that now he knows for sure that he married the right person. And he said that someday when we have children of our own, he hopes they will be just like you, honest and brave and full of love." Jamie thought about this. It felt good to know that Thomas liked him. Maybe having him as an uncle wouldn't be so bad after all. "When you come back from your honeymoon, will you still take me for ice cream sometimes?" Jamie asked. Sarah smiled and took his hand. "Of course I will. Nothing is going to change between us, Jamie. I'll just have more love to give, not less." Jamie nodded, satisfied. Then he remembered something else. "I'm sorry I told our secret," he said. "I didn't mean to. It just came out." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Some secrets are meant to be shared," she said. "And this one turned out to be the best wedding gift anyone could have given us." As the night went on, many guests started to leave. They came to say goodbye to Sarah and Thomas, and many of them stopped to pat Jamie on the head or tell him what a wonderful job he had done with his speech. Jamie was getting tired of all the attention, but he smiled politely as his mother had taught him. "Time to go home, Jamie," his father said finally. "It's way past your bedtime." Jamie didn't argue. His eyes were heavy, and he could barely keep his head up. But before they left, he wanted to say goodbye to Sarah and Thomas. He found them near the door, thanking people as they left. When Sarah saw Jamie coming, she knelt down to his level despite her big white dress. "Are you leaving, sleepyhead?" she asked with a smile. Jamie nodded. "Dad says it's past my bedtime." "He's right," Sarah said. "But I'm so glad you were here today. You made my wedding day even more special than I could have imagined." Jamie didn't fully understand why his words had been so important, but he was happy that Sarah was pleased. "I had fun," he said, "especially the dancing part." Thomas joined them and put his hand on Jamie's shoulder. "You're a natural dancer," he said. "Maybe next time we can try some more advanced moves." Jamie liked the sound of "next time." It meant that Thomas wanted to spend time with him in the future. "When you come back from your trip, can we go to the park?" Jamie asked. "Absolutely," Thomas promised. "Maybe we can play some baseball." Jamie smiled. Thomas was pretty good at baseball. Maybe having an uncle wouldn't be so bad after all. Sarah gave Jamie a tight hug. "I love you so much," she whispered in his ear. "Thank you for being you." Jamie hugged her back, careful not to wrinkle her dress too much. "I love you too, Aunt Sarah." As Jamie and his parents walked to their car, Jamie looked back at the tent one last time. The lights made it glow like something from a fairy tale. Inside, he could see shadows of people still dancing. He could hear music and laughter floating through the night air. "Did I do something wrong today?" Jamie asked his mother as she helped him into the car. He was still confused about why everyone had made such a big deal about what he said. His mother buckled his seatbelt and looked at him with soft eyes. "No, sweetheart, you did something very right. You reminded everyone what love really means." "But all I did was tell about when I was sick," Jamie said, yawning. His father started the car and looked at Jamie in the rearview mirror. "What you told us was that Sarah was willing to give up a part of herself to save you. That's a very big deal, Jamie. Most people never have someone who loves them that much." Jamie thought about this as the car pulled away from the church. He hadn't known that Sarah's offer was so special. To him, it had just seemed like the kind of thing Sarah would do because she loved him. By the time they got home, Jamie was almost asleep. His father carried him into the house and up to his bedroom. As his mother helped him change into his pajamas, Jamie was too tired to even brush his teeth properly. "Mom," Jamie said as she tucked him into bed, "do you think Thomas knows how lucky he is to have Aunt Sarah?" His mother smiled and kissed his forehead. "After today, I'm sure he does. Thanks to you." Jamie closed his eyes, feeling happy and important. His last thought before falling asleep was of Sarah's smile when he had told everyone about her secret promise. He was glad he had spoken up at the wedding, even if he hadn't planned to. Some things were too special to keep secret forever. The next morning, Jamie woke up later than usual. When he went downstairs, he found his parents sitting at the kitchen table looking at something on his mother's phone. They were smiling. "Come here, Jamie," his mother called when she saw him. "Look at this picture from the wedding." Jamie climbed onto a chair and looked at the phone. It was a photo of him dancing with Thomas, standing on his shoes. Sarah was watching them from the side, with the happiest look on her face. "The photographer sent some preview pictures this morning," his father explained. "He said this one was his favorite from the whole wedding." Jamie studied the picture. He looked small next to Thomas, but not scared or shy. He looked like he belonged there, like he was part of something important. 2 weeks passed since the wedding. Jamie went back to school and his normal life. His friends didn't care about weddings or speeches, so Jamie played soccer and talked about video games with them instead. But at home, people were still talking about what happened at the wedding. Mrs. Wilson from church called again. Jamie's mother told his father one evening, "She wants to write about Jamie and Sarah for the community newsletter. That's the third person this week who's asked." Jamie was playing with his toy dinosaurs on the living room floor, but he was listening. He didn't understand why people wanted to write about him and Sarah. He had just told the truth. "What's so special about what I said?" Jamie asked, looking up from his toys. His parents looked at each other. His father put down his newspaper. "Jamie, what you told everyone about Aunt Sarah was very special," his father explained. "Most people don't offer to give away a part of their body to help someone else. It was a very brave and loving thing she was willing to do for you. And it showed everyone at the wedding what kind of person Sarah truly is," his mother added. "Sometimes people only see the outside of a person. You help them see the inside of Sarah's heart." Jamie thought about this. He still didn't fully understand, but he nodded anyway. Grown-ups often made simple things seem complicated. The next day was Saturday. Jamie was watching cartoons when the doorbell rang. His mother went to answer it, and Jamie heard familiar voices. He jumped up from the couch and ran to the door. "Aunt Sarah, Thomas," he shouted with excitement. Sarah and Thomas stood in the doorway, both smiling widely. Sarah was wearing normal clothes now, not her wedding dress. She looked more like the aunt Jamie had always known. "We're back," Sarah said, opening her arms for a hug. Jamie ran into her arms. "Did you bring me anything?" he asked, then quickly added, "Mom says I shouldn't ask that." Sarah and Thomas laughed. "As a matter of fact, we did," Thomas said. He reached into a bag and pulled out a small box wrapped in blue paper. Jamie took the box carefully. "Can I open it now?" His mother nodded. "Go ahead." Jamie tore off the paper and opened the box. Inside was a small snow globe with a beach scene. When he shook it, tiny bits of gold glitter swirled around palm trees and a small sailboat. "It's from our honeymoon island," Sarah explained. "When you shake it, it looks like the sunset we saw every evening." "It's perfect," Jamie said, shaking the globe again to watch the glitter fall slowly. "Thank you." "That's not all," Thomas said. He pulled something else from his pocket. We also brought 3 tickets to the baseball game tomorrow. The Blue Jays are playing. We thought you might want to come with us. Jamie's eyes grew wide. Really? Just me with you and Aunt Sarah? Sarah nodded. Just the 3 of us. What do you say? Yes. Jamie jumped up and down. Can I go, Mom? Please. His mother smiled. Of course you can. That evening, Sarah and Thomas stayed for dinner. They told stories about their honeymoon, about the beach, and the clear blue water. Jamie listened with interest, but he was most excited about the baseball game tomorrow. After dinner, while the grown-ups were having coffee in the living room, Jamie went to get the snow globe from his room. He brought it down to show Sarah how he had given it a special place on his shelf next to his favorite things. When Jamie walked into the living room, he stopped in the doorway. Sarah and his mother were both crying, but they were smiling too. His father and Thomas were looking at something on Thomas's phone. What's wrong? Jamie asked, worried. Nothing's wrong, sweetheart, his mother said, wiping her eyes. Thomas was just showing us a video from the wedding that someone sent him. It's the moment when you told everyone about Sarah offering her kidney to you. You made quite an impact, buddy, Thomas said. The person who took this video said it was the most beautiful wedding moment they'd ever seen. Sarah held out her arms, and Jamie went to her. She pulled him onto her lap like she used to do when he was smaller. The video has been shared hundreds of times online, Sarah explained. Lots of people have seen it now. They're calling you the honest ring bearer and saying your words were the most touching wedding speech ever. Jamie frowned. But I wasn't even the ring bearer. That was cousin Michael. The grown-ups laughed, and Jamie felt confused again. Why are people watching a video of me? He asked. Sarah looked at Jamie with gentle eyes. Sometimes, Jamie, a simple truth told from the heart can touch many people. That's what happened with your words at our wedding. But why? Jamie still didn't understand. Thomas moved to sit next to them. People are touched by your story because it reminds them of what's really important in life. Not fancy weddings or expensive things, but love and being willing to help others even when it's hard. Jamie's father nodded. In today's world, many people forget about the simple goodness of helping others. Your story about Sarah reminded them. Jamie thought about this as he turned the snow globe in his hands, watching the golden sparkles float down. He still didn't fully understand why grown-ups made such a big deal about his words, but he was happy that something he said had made people feel good. The next day, Thomas picked Jamie up for the baseball game. Sarah was waiting in the car, and she had a baseball cap for Jamie with the team's logo on it. Jamie felt very special sitting between Sarah and Thomas in the stands, eating hot dogs and drinking soda. During the 7th inning stretch, when people stood up to walk around, a man from the row behind them tapped Thomas on the shoulder. "Excuse me," the man said, "but is this the little boy from that wedding video? The one who talked about his aunt offering her kidney?" Thomas looked at Sarah before answering. Sarah gave a small nod. "Yes, this is Jamie," Thomas said simply. The man smiled at Jamie. "My wife and I watched that video. It was really something special, young man. I'm a doctor, you know, and I work with kidney patients. After seeing that video, 2 people I know signed up to be kidney donors. They said your aunt inspired them." Jamie looked up at the man, surprised. "Really?" The man nodded. "Really. Sometimes it just takes one story to change how people think." Later, as they were driving home from the game, Jamie was quiet in the back seat. He was thinking about what the man had said. "Aunt Sarah," he finally said, "that man said you inspired people to be kidney donors. What does that mean?" Sarah turned in her seat to look at Jamie. "It means that when people heard about what I was willing to do for you, it made them want to help others too. There are many sick people waiting for kidneys, and not enough donors. Every new person who offers to donate can save a life. So, because of what I said at the wedding, more people might get better?" Jamie asked. Thomas nodded, looking at Jamie in the rearview mirror. "That's right, buddy. Your honest words might help save lives." For the first time, Jamie began to understand why his simple story had touched so many people. It wasn't just about him and Sarah. It was about showing people how to be kind and brave. That night, Jamie lay in bed thinking about everything that had happened since the wedding. He remembered how nervous he had felt standing in front of all those people. He remembered Sarah's face when he told their secret, and he remembered Thomas dancing with him, making him feel important and included. Jamie's mother came in to say goodnight. She sat on the edge of his bed. "Mom," Jamie said quietly, "I think I understand now why people cared about what I said at the wedding." His mother brushed his hair back from his forehead. "Oh, why do you think they cared?" "Because it wasn't just a story about Aunt Sarah and me," Jamie explained. "It was a story about how people should love each other enough to help, even when it's hard." His mother looked surprised, then smiled proudly. "That's exactly right, Jamie. That's why it touched so many hearts." Jamie smiled and hugged his snow globe close to his chest. "When I grow up," he said sleepily, "I want to be brave like Aunt Sarah." "You already are brave," his mother whispered, kissing his forehead. "You were brave enough to stand up and speak the truth, even when it was scary. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing of all." As Jamie drifted off to sleep, he thought about the baseball game, and the man who had spoken to them, and the people who had decided to be kidney donors because of Sarah's story. He felt a warm, happy feeling knowing that something good was happening in the world because of what he had said on that special day. 1 year had passed since Sarah and Thomas's wedding. It was their first anniversary, and they invited the whole family to a special dinner at their new house. Jamie was excited because he hadn't seen Sarah and Thomas for 2 weeks. They had been busy moving into their new home. Jamie helped his mother make a card for Sarah and Thomas. He drew a picture of the three of them at the baseball game on the front. Inside, his mother helped him write, "Happy anniversary to the best aunt and uncle." Jamie was proud of his work. When they arrived at Sarah and Thomas's house, Jamie ran to the door ahead of his parents. Sarah opened it with a big smile. "There's my favorite nephew," she said, giving him a tight hug. "I'm your only nephew," Jamie reminded her, as he always did when she said this. Sarah laughed. "That's why you're my favorite." Inside, the house was filled with delicious smells. Thomas was in the kitchen wearing an apron. He high-fived Jamie and showed him how to check if the pasta was ready. Jamie's grandparents were already there, and soon more family members arrived. Everyone brought gifts and cards for Sarah and Thomas. During dinner, they talked and laughed about memories from the wedding day. "I still can't believe it's been a year," Sarah's mother said. "It feels like just yesterday we were all at the church." "The wedding video has over 1 million views now," Jamie's father mentioned. "People still comment on it every day." Jamie looked up from his plate. "Really? That many people?" Thomas nodded. "Really. And something else happened because of that video, Jamie. Something we wanted to tell you about today." Sarah reached for an envelope on the side table. She handed it to Jamie. "Open it," she said with a smile. Jamie carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter with many big words he couldn't understand. But at the top was a logo that said, "Children's Kidney Foundation." "What is it?" Jamie asked. Sarah explained. "After our wedding, when the video of your speech started to spread online, people began donating money to help children with kidney problems. The hospital where you were treated received enough money to buy new machines and hire more doctors." And Thomas continued, "They've started a new program called Sarah's Promise that helps match kidney donors with children who need them." Jamie looked at the letter again. "All because of what I said at the wedding." Sarah nodded, her eyes wet with tears. "Your innocent words that day started something wonderful, Jamie. Something that will help many sick children get better." Jamie felt a warm feeling spread through his chest. He hadn't meant to do anything special. He had just told the truth about his Aunt Sarah. But sometimes, the simple truth was the most powerful thing of all. After dinner, When everyone was having cake in the living room, Thomas asked for everyone's attention. He stood up and held Sarah's hand. "We have one more announcement to make on our anniversary," he said, smiling down at Sarah. Sarah stood up next to him, glowing with happiness. "We're going to have a baby," she announced. "In about 6 months, Jamie will have a little cousin to play with." The room erupted in cheers and congratulations. Jamie's grandparents were crying happy tears. Jamie's mother hugged Sarah carefully. When things quieted down, Thomas knelt in front of Jamie. "We have something important to ask you, buddy." Jamie looked at him curiously. "We want you to be the baby's special guardian," Sarah explained. "That means you'll be an important person in the baby's life, someone who will always watch out for them and be there when they need you. Like you were for me when I was sick," Jamie asked. Sarah nodded, wiping away a tear. "Exactly like that." "Will you do it?" Thomas asked. Jamie didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said firmly. "I'll be the best guardian ever." That night, as Jamie's parents drove home, Jamie sat quietly in the back seat looking out at the stars. He thought about everything that had happened because of one wedding day and one simple truth he had shared. "Mom," he said softly, "I think I want to be a doctor when I grow up. I want to help kids who are sick, like I was." His mother smiled at him in the rearview mirror. "I think you'd be wonderful at that, Jamie." "And maybe," Jamie added, "I can tell them the story about Aunt Sarah and how she was willing to give me her kidney, so they won't be scared." "That's a perfect idea," his father said. "Your story has already helped so many people. I'm sure it will help many more." Jamie smiled and closed his eyes, feeling happy and peaceful. He couldn't wait to meet his new little cousin and tell them the story of how one sentence at a wedding had changed so many lives.